So today, we're going to talk about some misconceptions that a lot of beginners tend to hear when they're trying to start out learning how to play 5A. The ideal counterweight needs to be just about 10.5 grams. 11 grams. Always 11 grams. 10.7 because that's the Duncan dice. It has to be 10.7. You're not playing 5A if it's not 15 grams. So we're just going to disregard any weight that anyone has ever tried to say a counterweight has to be, the happy medium that it's got to be the right ratio of weight to yo-yo. Pretty much all of that is completely false. Since the beginning of 5A, players have really chosen all kinds of things to use as counterweights. People have used a single dice, people have used double dice, people have used crazy action figures, people have used little plush toys, people have used rubber ducks. Champion 5A player Bo Ming Wang swears by a rubber duck, and he actually uses rubber ducks in many of his freestyles and pretty much has been using it ever since he first started many years ago. That said, a good rule of thumb is to probably, if you can, try to use a counterweight that is actually manufactured for 5A play. Not that any weight of these counterweights are exactly on point to what they should be, but it's just an easier happy medium to get to if you're trying to start with 5A. And of course, if you look on the market, you'll see things like Duncan dice, you'll see things like Porycon, Candy dice, and all of these are great products, so I highly recommend checking out some of those if you're going to pick something up for 5A. But if you also don't have the ability to pick up one of these dice, there is nothing wrong with finding an everyday household object like an eraser or even a rubber duck. The next common misconception a lot of beginner players will hear is that you need a certain kind of yo-yo to do 5A. I see it said all the time that there's a certain kind of yo-yo for 5A. Totally not even true. That's absolutely ridiculous. The fact of the matter is, if it's a yo-yo that you like for 1A, it's a yo-yo that you can use for 5A. There have been all kinds of different yo-yos used for 5A. Big yo-yos, small yo-yos, skinny yo-yos, really wide yo-yos. People have used responsive yo-yos, unresponsive yo-yos, and everything in between. It all really comes down to your preference and what kind of yo-yo you really like. And if 5A is really new to you, I highly suggest starting with the yo-yo that you already know you're really comfortable with in 1A, because most likely that comfort is going to help you out a lot in transitioning from your 1A play over into your 5A play. If you like undersized yo-yos, go for undersized yo-yos for 5A. If you like oversized yo-yos, go for oversized yo-yos for 5A. It all comes down to personal preference, and you can experiment around a little bit too. Maybe if your norm is a kind of smaller undersized yo-yo, maybe you can try seeing if you might feel and vibe more of the bigger yo-yo, and vice versa if you like to. And finally, the third most common heard misconception I hear a lot in regards to learning 5A play is about string length. You're supposed to use a really short string, a really long string, or something in between. The fact again is that ultimately it is your personal preference how long you want your string to be. I've heard many people say that you should start with a shorter string for 5A, but personally when I started 5A, I actually found it more advantageous to use a longer string. It allowed things to kind of slow down a little bit more for me, so I could kind of keep my eye on where I was catching a dice, what the yo-yo was doing, and just overall having more time to figure out what I wanted to do next for each step. At the same time, some beginners may find that having a shorter string allows for more control over the tricks that they're trying to accomplish. I recommend starting out with your standard 1A length string, seeing how that feels for you, and if you feel like that might just be a little bit too long, things might not be moving how you want them to, then you can go to a shorter string. And if the shorter string starts to feel like really weird for you, maybe things are moving too fast, go to a longer string. Ultimately, it's your preference, and whatever you feel most comfortable with is what you should go with. I hope this clears up some of the confusion maybe some newer players might have had from hearing about these different misconceptions in 5A and maybe some information that they've been told in the past. And of course, this is my personal view on learning 5A. This is how I learned starting as a younger player, growing up to where I am today. And some other players might not necessarily have the same experience, and they maybe have some different ideas about how 5A should be learned. This is just my method for learning, and if you guys find it helpful, perfect. If you guys feel like maybe some other methods are more helpful, then please go for it. Any way that is more comfortable for you and allows you to pick up 5A quicker and easier. Thank you guys once again for tuning in. I'm Josh Yee, and I'll see you guys next time.